let's do some Christmas, shall we? So I do a lot of storytelling up in Julian. My husband grew up there. And he's now sort of the de facto mayor because he's the president of the Chamber of Commerce of Julian, California. So we do a lot of stuff up there. And so I'm continually creating stories that are about apples and gold mines and the culture of gold rushers and sort of old-timey Julian stories. And this is one of those. And it is about Christmas, but it's a sectarian, is that the word I'm looking for? A non-religious Christmas story. This is a miner's Christmas. Well, Elizabeth walked down Main Street, and there was a building on the facade. It said, New Julian Mining Company. She walked down that dusty street, and she noticed for the first time that in the window of that building, it said, hiring hard workers. Well, Elizabeth opened the door. She went right in, and she said, I'm a hard worker. Hire me. And the man sitting behind the table was as wide as the table himself, and he pulled a cigar out of his mouth and said, what? Hire you? You're a lady. And Elizabeth looked down at herself. She looked down at her dusty breeches that she was wearing. They were her dead husband's, and the rope that held them onto her waist, and she looked at her dusty clothing, and she said, well, lady's a strong word, but I'm a hard worker no matter what's in my pants. And he said, yeah, but no. I can't be responsible for ruining a lady's soft hands. And she said, she held out her hands and she said, sir, I have been raising 6 kids on my own since my husband died. A person doesn't come through that much laundry with soft hands. Well, he took a look at her hands, those red knuckles and the swollen and the cracked skin. And he said, why'd you want a job anyway? She said, well, sir, I just told you I had 6 kids. It's real hard to get by just on whatever washing I can bring in. So I'd really like to give him something for Christmas. And he said, all right. I don't think you're going to last long, but we'll try it out, huh? Probation-like. And that's how she started. She got that job on probation. And on her first day, all the guys kind of laughed at her. They were like, go make me a sandwich, right? Until they realized that she was outworking every single one of them the whole day long. And after that, there was no talk of sandwiches anymore in that mine. Well, this was one of those years where Christmas Eve lands on Christmas was landing on a Sunday. So Christmas Eve was a Saturday. So Sunday was like their only day off. So they were actually going to have the day off on Christmas. So this is the day before that, Christmas Eve. And Elizabeth is walking down that street to get to her job in the mine. And she's got her hands in her pockets, getting a little cold. The sky is kind of gray. And she can judge, there's some clouds over there over the coast. And she can kind of judge like, all right, seems like we might have a white Christmas tomorrow. That storm is probably going to blow in overnight. We'll get some snow, and it'll be like a second Christmas gift for my kids, right? She's got her hands in her pockets, and she can feel through a hole in one of her gloves a couple of coins that are there. And it has been a long, long time since she had any extra coins to feel in those pockets. She looks at her gloves, and they're kind of a patchwork of brown and gray, where they've been, fingers have been reknit and holes have been darned. They've been patched, and it looks like she's going to have to make another patch tonight through this hole where she can feel those coins. Well, she walks past. She's walking to the mine, and she walks past the New Julian Mining Company. Then she walks past the general store, and there in the window is a display of brand new gloves. And sitting right on top of them is a pair that look like they're leather and they're soft and they are lady-sized. Well, she feels those coins burning a hole in her pocket. And she veers her way into the general store on her way in, and she goes straight to those gloves, and she picks them up, and they're soft. And she thinks, oh, I could just give my kids these ones. They could make dolls out of them, and I could have warm hands for the first time in so long. But as she turned to go to the proprietor to pay for these gloves, a flash of gold caught her eye in the corner. It was the last of the year's apples. 3 bright yellow apples sitting there on top of a barrel. They were a penny a piece, which is a dear price. But they were the last ones for the year, the last taste of summer until next September. Well, she held those coins in her hand and she held those gloves in her hand. She did the math. There were 3 apples. She had 6 kids. She got those apples. Each of them could have a half an apple tomorrow after Christmas dinner. She put those gloves back, grabbed those apples, handed over her coins, and made her way to the mine for work. Now, working in the mine with her today was old Tom. Old Tom is a big black guy. He was one of the original settlers of Julian after the Kumeyaay people who came first, of course. So he's big and he's been here forever. His face is kind of like a set of like tectonic plates. And Junior. Now, Junior has walked his way to Julian from Texas, from his family's farm in Texas. And he'd made his way all the way here, and they were all working together. And Elizabeth is picking away at that wall. And Junior takes a break, and he wipes his forehead, and he says, gee, Elizabeth, it's Christmas tomorrow. Did you get your kids anything for Christmas? And Elizabeth says, my kids, they know to be grateful for the clothes on their back and the food on their plates. And yeah, I did get them a little something special. And she worked away. And just then behind them, old Tom passed by. Now, old Tom, he was pushing one of those big, it was like a cart. He was pushing that cart down the track right behind him. And as he passed by behind him, they heard the clunk of gold falling to the ground. Now, you do not work in a gold mine for very long without recognizing the sound of gold falling to the ground. So Junior turned and he picked up, it was a little burlap sack. He held it out. Oh, Tom, you dropped this. Well, Tom set that wagon down and he turned and he swiped it out of Junior's hand and said, hands off. And Junior said, all right, old Tom, look, I was just giving it back to you, but gee, old Tom, why you got our gold with you today? You always told me to keep my gold locked away somewhere special and somewhere separate from my own body. That Tom, the tectonic plates of his face shifted into if Elizabeth didn't know him better, she would have thought was a smile. He shifted and he said, getting out. Taking the supply wagon tonight down the coast. Never going to set foot in a mine again. With that, he turned and he walked back out to the doorway. Junior was left going, gee. Well, they finished working that day. They did all their hours. They gathered up all their things. Elizabeth being really careful not to bruise those apples in her bag. And they went out together to the entrance to the mine, and they stopped short. Because where it had been dusty brown and the dark green of fir trees and evergreens and the burgundy of manzanitas, right now everything was white. Well, that storm had come in faster than Elizabeth thought, and it was snowing so hard they couldn't see their hand in front of their faces. Tom looked at it. Not getting out tonight. And he turned and went back into the mine. And Junior said, but old Tom, your supply wagon, you're going to miss it. You're not going to get down to the coast tonight. And then he went, and Elizabeth, your kids, it's Christmas. You got to get home. Come on, we can go. And Elizabeth said, Junior, no, we wouldn't make it 10 feet in there without becoming minor popsicles. And he said, but it's Christmas. And Elizabeth put an arm around his shoulders and said, I know. Come on, let's get inside. And they all went inside deep enough into the mine where the draft wasn't too bad. And they they made a tiny little fire, and they all kind of gathered all their belongings to them, kind of like they leaned up against the walls on 3 separate walls. They were leaning up against them, hugging onto all their belongings to kind of keep that core heat inside, see if they could make it through the night in this mine in a snowstorm. And it was so dark. What is happening? happened? And Elizabeth heard this crunching sound from across the mine, and she looked across, and she said, Junior, what are you doing? And she could barely see him in the flickering of that tiny fire they had going. Junior, what are you doing? He had his pickaxe raised up, and he was bringing it down on something on the ground. And he said, Miss Elizabeth, if we're going to die in this mine here tonight, and when we don't got no food, and we're going to die of hunger and cold, and I carried these all the way with me from Texas, and I've been eating them just one at a time when I get homesick, but if this is my last night on this earth, then we might as well just eat them all now. And he pulled up a sack that rattled like warm, like a friendly rattlesnake, and he set it down and he opened it up, and it was pecans. And he pulled a couple out. He said, I hope you'll eat a couple with me and think about my mama. And he set those pecans on the ground and he lifted his axe up, and Elizabeth said, wait, Junior. Those pecans, it's not the only food we got here in this mine tonight. And with that, she opened her bag, and the scent of summer filled that mine. She pulled out those apples. She said, look, one for each of us. They were going to be Christmas presents for my kids, but, we're here now. And she tried to hand one to old Tom. He wouldn't take it, so she just set it down on the ground and kind of rolled it towards him. And she went to take a big bite into it, and Junior said, no, Miss Elizabeth, these are for your kids. And she said, Junior, I raised my kids right. If they knew there were hungry mouths in this mine here tonight and we did not eat these apples, my kids would not want these apples. This would not be a gift. And with that, she took a big crunchy bite, and the juice started dripping down her mouth. And then from next to her, old Tom said, wait. And he reached into his shirt pocket and he pulled out that little burlap sack. And he opened it up and he pulled out not a chunk of gold, but a little paper twist. And he sniffed it and he handed it over to Elizabeth. And Elizabeth took that paper twist and, oh, Tom, cinnamon, and was that nutmeg and allspice? Oh, Tom, you dog. Well, they gathered together around that fire. They stoked it a little bit higher. They set a tin can on top. Elizabeth sliced the rest of those apples right in there. Junior crumpled some of those pecans on top. And finally, they broke open that paper twist and sprinkled it across the top. And pretty soon, that mine smelled like apple pie, like Christmas. Well, they dug right in. They just ate right out of the pot, all sitting knee together around that fire, digging in with their spoons together. And when their bellies were a little bit full and they were a little bit warmed up from the inside, with old Tom, he reached back into his pocket and he pulled out that little burlap sack again, opened it up, and he pulled out a little gold nugget. And he said, this one I took right out of the hands of Ground Squirrel. And he told them that story. And then he told them about Poncho, the horse whisperer, and how he got this one and this one. Story after story after story came pouring out. And then Junior told them about the rolling pecan farms and the hills where he grew up and about his mama. And then Elizabeth told them about how her husband used to sing their kids to sleep every night. And how her heart broke when her youngest had asked, Mama, what's a Christmas present? Well, they all felt a lot warmer after that. They settled back against a wall, but this time they sat shoulder to shoulder against the same wall. And they held their bags and their belongings to their bodies to maintain that core heat, and they snuggled up next to each other and kind of drifted off on each other's shoulders. And the fire died, and in the final glowing embers, the mica and all the dust in those mine walls glittered awake like stars. And there was water dripping down from way inside the mine. It sounded like bells. Well, they all woke up the next morning. Good news. They woke up, they gathered their things together, and they went out. They dropped their apple earring. And they went out to the entrance to the mine again. And everything was white, but it had stopped snowing, so at least they could see. Well, they went their ways, leaving 3 separate sets of footprints. Tom heading off to the next supply wagon, and Junior back to his home, and Elizabeth back to her kids, leaving these footprints in the snow. And as she walked, Elizabeth reached into her pockets for her gloves, and she pulled out her gloves, but this pocket wasn't empty. She reached in again, and she pulled out 7 pecans. She reached in for her other glove, and that pocket wasn't empty either. A rough little ball. It shone like gold in the sunlight because it was gold. Oh, Tom, you dog. Well, she put her gloves on, and she sang herself Christmas carols all the way back home to her kids. Thank you.